Welcome everyone. My name is Ali Amin. I am the CEO of UBI Index. UBI Index is a European research initiative based in Stockholm, Sweden, with an international research team specialized in incubation and entrepreneurship indexes. It is my pleasure to host and moderate this exclusive event, a global webinar, our first one and hopefully a successful one as well. Today you'll hear from 3 distinguished speakers to learn more about benchmarking practices in incubation today. We have 1 hour ahead of us, and to break it down, the speakers will get 15 minutes each, and you as the audience are welcome to write your questions in this chat. All the speakers see the chat, and if we have time we'll try to answer them. We have a small time slot in the end for some questions, and hopefully if I can moderate with the technology, I can help you to give the word. A small background: UBI Index started as a research project by our founder Joel Eriksson Enquist while attending Chalmers School of Entrepreneurship in Gothenburg, Sweden. He had this goal to find out the top performing university business incubators in the world. So what does top performing incubator mean? Well, for us it means incubator with the maximum vis-a-vis their resources. And one way of finding a top performing university incubator is by benchmarking. And as you all know, benchmarking is a really good way to learn from your peers and help adjust your business models. We at UBI Index realized the importance of this, which explains why benchmarking is our core activity. Our aim is to help start and transform incubators globally through effective and data-driven benchmarking. You can read more about UBI Index and our Global Benchmark 2013 report on our website. So with that said, I would like to present the agenda for tonight. Our 3 speakers comes from UBI Index, the NBIA, and EBN. From UBI Index, my dear friend and co-founder Dhruv Bhatli, Head of Research. Dhruv is the author of the Top University Business Incubator 2013 report, and he spearheads the product development, research, and communication here at UBI Index. And after Dhruv, I'm going to present Jasper Welch, President and CEO of the National Business Incubation Association. Jasper is an experienced entrepreneur, business incubator manager, a thought leader, strategic thinker, team leader, and a public speaker. So the perfect guy for an event like this. And last but not least, our dear friend from Brussels, Giordano Dichter, Head of Quality and Technical Assistant at EBN, the European BIC Network. Giordano is an expert in management of regional and international programs for local economic development. Well, with that said, I'm going to leave the word to my friend Dhruv. Hi, Dhruv.
Hi, Ali, and hi, everyone. Thanks for the nice intro. We have a very sunny day here in Paris, so I welcome you all from here. So before I actually start speaking in my presentation, I'd just like to lay out the structure, the way I'm going to talk today. As Ali just mentioned, that we finished doing the Global Benchmark Report 2013, where we studied more than 150 incubators in 22 different countries. So first I want to talk about why a global benchmark makes sense. And second, since we have done the study, I want to talk about the challenges that we faced while doing that benchmark. And then at the end, I'd like to share some of the insights from the benchmark. So let's get to it. So after having studied incubators around the world, I do think that global benchmark makes sense. And I'll lay out a few of the reasons why it's that way. First of all, we notice that despite the local reality, the local context in incubators most of the incubators are facing very common challenges. And we break those challenges into 2 parts. Local challenges, which come from the local context in which they are, or the region, and non-local challenges. And what we noticed in the benchmark, we're doing it, that most of the incubators are facing non-local challenges, or what we call universally similar challenges. And so it makes a lot of sense to see how those incubators actually react. How do they respond to those challenges? And it's a good way to learn from the incubators. Second, when we were doing the benchmark, we realized that some of the incubators with sometimes very similar resources, similar context, performed better than the others. So that's where the idea of benchmark is kind of so interesting, is that what is going on? Why are some incubators performing better than others? And so a global benchmark is also a way to identify those incubators, to see why are they doing better, and then learn from them. Third, when we are going and studying some of those incubators around the world, we realize how some of them have very innovative and sometimes very creative business models. And when we look at them closely, we realize that most of those insights are actually replicable to the other incubators, despite the geographic differences that they have, or in the vicinity where they are. Those insights are still very much relevant. And so when we are looking at those innovative models, we think, wow, this is really, really interesting. How come nobody has gone so far away from where they are and looked at this incubator? So doing a global benchmark allows us to identify those innovative business models which we might not think of as is. And fourth, I think incubators, since they are grooming entrepreneurs, it's a good idea that they behave like entrepreneurs in some sense, which means that they have to be a little bit more ambitious, a little bit more competitive. And while we were doing the global benchmark, we realized by participating in the global benchmark, the incubators, they learn their true standing, where they are, what are the things that they are doing well, what are the things that they need to improve. And doing a global benchmark allows them to how do you say, identify their potential. And that was very, very important. Now, having laid out some of the thoughts why a global benchmark makes sense, let me run you through some of the challenges we faced when we were doing our global benchmark. Like I said, we were going to so many different countries, so obviously there were many, many different challenges. I'm going to break them down into three key challenges. First of all, whenever we're doing a benchmark, it's very important for us to try to understand what to benchmark. Incubators have so many variables, so choosing the right indicators is very, very important. Second, it's very important to know how to benchmark. So even if you find the variables, what is the right method? How can we arrive at something very accurate, something reliable, is very, very important. And third, once we have done the benchmark, what are the most relevant results? What are the things worth sharing, and how to lay it out so incubators around the world can understand the significance of those results? So let me take it one by one. First, during our benchmark, we consulted a range of people. So we consulted existing knowledge about the indicators, about the incubation models, and then we went to some experts. Somebody like Lena Stamfeld, who's doing excellent research at Stanford. Somebody like Ray Leach, who's the advisor to President Obama. Or somebody like Danny Holsch, who's an entrepreneur himself and the researcher behind the Startup Genome Report, which I'm sure many of you have read. So we went to them and we started asking them that, hey guys, if we were to benchmark, and we're going to so many different countries and so many different incubators, so many different variables, what are the right indicators? How can we compare? It all came down to three different categories, which you see in front of you right here. First, almost everyone unanimously agrees that it's very important when we look at an incubator that we measure the incubator on the value it creates for the ecosystem. Second, that we must look at the incubator and see what kind of value it creates for its clients. And third, we must look at the past performance of the incubator which in our interpretation makes the incubator very attractive. So if you had good post-incubation performance in the past, you're a much more attractive incubator. So given these three key categories that we identified, we had 10 subcategories, and for each category, we had many other indicators. I'll come to that later. So like I said before, we had 3 assessment categories, and for each category, we had a certain number of subcategories, in total about 10 benchmarking indexes, and over 50 performance indicators, or assessment indicators, as we called it. Now, looking at all those indicators, we analyzed incubators on the indicators, and we then, on the independent indexes, accumulated the scores from each of the indexes to attribute a global score to the incubator. And for that, we had to build our own method, because it's such a complex mechanism that we had to build our own comprehensive framework and to build a method around it. But eventually we did, which brings us to, we've got the indicators, we've got a method that we have taken place. How do we share the results? How do we tackle some of the problems that come when we are doing the analysis of the data that we have? So we have many mechanisms that we ensure in making sure that the results that we have are very, very reliable. I would just mention a few of those mechanisms right here. So, for instance, when we are doing benchmark, it's common to have self-reporting data, which means the incubators report their data. So in the research design, we must have mechanisms to make sure that we remove the extreme values. So we have the right data set when we are doing those benchmarks. Second, we must rely on a lot of secondary data. So we went about and looked at other secondary data sources. One of them, for instance, is the Startup Ecosystem Report. So if your incubator is in a more advanced ecosystem, it's very important that we adjust the bias vis-a-vis another incubator which doesn't have all those interesting advantages. Another associated component of this has to do with the use of what you call strongly correlated indicators. So if we find indicators which are not strongly correlated, we have to discard it, and we have to only use what we call good and reliable data, which gives us, in the end, very good results, or at least reliable results. Having said that, it's important to understand that it's the first benchmark that we built. So although it's very reliable, although we are very proud of what we have achieved, given the complexity of the benchmark, there are obviously ideas to improve it further. And we consider it an ongoing process. So once you've got the data, how do we see the results? So once you get the UBI Index report, we realized very quickly that most of the reports, or at least the benchmarks that we had seen, come from very complex data, very complex research, and they look very complex. And this is something we absolutely didn't want to do. So we tried to have very reliable research, very reliable data, very complex way of assessing the incubators, but we presented everything very, very simple. So if you go inside the incubator benchmark report, this is some kind of a sneak peek where you'll see that everything is very clearly marked out. The key figures that you want to know, so you want to know how you're performing versus how the others are doing. You can take it further, and you can see it by sectors. You can see it by geographic region. You can see indexes, which are the incubators performing well. And same goes for the indexes. You can see the indexes by geographic region. You can see the indexes by sectors. And like you see here, apart from some of the figures that you have right here, you see that we have also included some kind of analysis where we talk about best practices from top incubators. So if you want to be a top incubator, if you want to improve what you are doing, what are some of the best practices? What is happening for low-performing incubators? Why are they low-performing? What are their key problems or their key constraints? That is something that you find inside the report as well. Now, having said that, let me share a few of the insights from the report. So we have a list of 10 best practices, and we have other things that we have explained inside the report. But if I were to just pick out three key insights that we always notice from the top incubators, it would come to this. We notice all the time that top performing incubators, they focus more and more on being financially self-reliant, which means they are creative, they are innovative in the ways of becoming more and more independent. They might begin with some kind of subsidy, but eventually they start to be more and more self-sustaining entity. They are running it like a company. Second, they focus a lot more on the competence development of clients. And when I say competence development of clients, they really identify that their key component of success is how well can they develop the clients. And that's very, very important to them because they consider those clients to be their ambassadors. They consider those clients to go out and become success stories, which will then come back to them. And they really see the value there. So for any incubator which wants to, let's say, become a top performing incubator, which wants to succeed, they must focus on the clients, the value that you can provide the clients. And third, that top incubators, they go outside and they don't stay only in the four walls that they have called the incubator, which means that they go outside and they engage with the ecosystem. And not only do they engage, but they also try to contribute to the ecosystem. And that's very, very important. It's a great relationship that they build. And it's because of that great relationship that a lot of great things come their way. So top incubators focus on these three things. So if I was to just summarize the whole presentation, I would probably say that there is a misconception that you cannot take value, that every incubator can't take value from a global benchmark. In reality, they can. In reality, there are key lessons to learn from top incubators, some of which I highlighted here, and that everyone should try to be a little bit more competitive and ambitious and go and see how they stand against the incubators in the world. I think that's the way forward. With this, I'm going to thank you all, and I'm going to give the word to Ali.
Thank you, Drew. That was, I mean, I've heard this presentation before, of course, and every time I'm just amazed of the complexity and how to move forward with this. But we try our best, and we try to learn and be as modest as we can along the way. And I see that we have people still joining in from Palestine, from Paraguay. Hi, everybody. Welcome. We're just going to move along. That was the first speaker. Our next speaker is from Ohio, or Athens, Ohio in the US. Is the president of the NBIA, Jasper Welch. Jasper is connecting by the phone. So let's see if we can get him.